As you know, these are merely my opinions on these videos. I felt in recent times it's probably just advisable to remind people that these are just simply my opinions and my questions. I'm looking around at what's going on and thinking, oh, that seems a bit strange, doesn't it? And I'm merely questioning it. The reason I say that is every now and again, well, actually more and more now, more frequently, I'm getting emails from people who seem to be frightened. They're concerned about certain things that have been happening in the last couple of years. They've seen things online. They've seen perhaps authorities' response to certain things. They're confused. They're frightened, and they're reaching out to people, and that's only understandable. I think I would do exactly the same. If one's not sure of a situation, you're looking for somebody to talk to who might help or guide you or can share your concern, or at least honestly say, I have no idea. Now, it's interesting that people are being in touch, and I've never had that happen before when I've been making these types of videos. So it's interesting that you think other people seem to be sharing a similar outlook to what I have. They're seeing the same type of things around them, or having personal tragedies in some cases, I'm sorry to say, happen to them, which is very sad. So they'll hear something or they'll obey some diktat that's come down to them from an authority, and then something went wrong and they've gone back and they've said, oh, should this have happened? And the authority has, in some of these cases, have ignored them. And that seems to me very strange, which is why I'm very much questioning what we see around us. As I say, I'm no expert, and I can't vouch for very many things, because unless it's actually happened to me, how can I say any of it's true? So, for example, I happened to stumble across a website the other day. I thought I would just tell you about it. You can make up your own mind if it's all kosher or real or any of those things. I'm just sharing what I've seen. So it's a website called worldcouncilforhealth.org, and you can look it up online, I suppose, if you so wish. Now, don't get confused by the name World Council for Health for other similar sounding bodies that we've heard about perhaps in the news recently in the last couple of years, making big pronouncements or telling us how to live our lives. Don't get confused with that one. This is something called worldcouncilforhealth.org. And on one of their news pages, I think it's the most recent one in actual fact, not necessarily the first page you come to, but I think it's something like on a tab saying news. I'll put the link in the description to make it easier for you to have a look. There's a video, and it's a very curious video. Now, it's in the public domain, so I assume I'm allowed to mention it, and nobody would be upset if I do. And I'll tell you what the video is called, and this is verbatim what the video is called. It says, it's called UK Doctors Call for Government Investigation of mRNA COVID Vaccines. That's UK Doctors. So I found that a bit curious, because I know that people have emailed me and they've been worried about similar things. So I thought I'd watch the video just to see what it was about. And it seemed to be quite a number of UK doctors who have been working, and they have been noticing some unusual anomalies. And as a result of that, they're calling for the government to have another look at these particular things. Well, that's what the video is about. And now, I can't tell you whether these are real doctors, whether the video is a spoof, whether it's a lie, whether it's genuine or not. I think people have to use their own common sense. Of course, all the names of the doctors have been put up on the screen, and one could very easily do a little search to see if it's genuine. And I think people are able to sort of work that out for themselves. I know I was. So you can go around and think, well, is it credible? Let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that it is credible, because why would it not be? And it's presented on this website, the World Council for Health.org, which also seems very credible. And so we'll take it at face value, shall we? And we'll use common sense as we look at this. And as you listen to these doctors making their worries known, you think, well, if doctors are worried, people who I suppose initially were following a science that they were told to, and then started to discover results which didn't really add up with what let's say the current or the official line is, then they have reason to perhaps speak out and say, oh, hang on a minute, I think there might be a problem. I think it's a bit like a recent MP who stood up and said there was a problem, but something rather awkward happened to him, as far as I remember. And I'm hoping that nothing awkward happens to doctors who are seeing on the street, as it were, on the ground, what is happening to their patients as a result of something that perhaps was mandated or people were persuaded, cajoled into having a medical procedure, I believe we could call it. And it's interesting that these doctors, of course, are somewhat concerned. Now, I don't know whether anybody is listening to them, and I'm sure, of course, any benevolent and kind-hearted government who might be approached by doctors on a medical issue would, of course, naturally be very concerned. They wouldn't be perhaps like, I would assume they'd be taken more seriously than perhaps, a member of the public going to their MP and saying, look, I'm a bit concerned, and the MP saying, look, there's nothing to worry about, it's all fine, which might be the current thinking. But if doctors who are seeing and have evidence for something that's perhaps not actually in the patient's interests, I'm sure that MPs and, of course, the government themselves would be absolutely wanting to make sure they've listened to all of this and spoken to those doctors who have those concerns, because they're dealing with real people, people who pay their taxes, people who keep the people that we put into power in power, of course. So I would find it very strange, as I'm sure anybody would in a fair and level society, that if doctors were concerned, their voices weren't being heard. It would be very confusing, wouldn't it? But I'm sure that they are, of course. I'm sure that every bit of evidence is being presented to whomever it needs to be, and everything is fine. There would be no reason, of course, to be concerned otherwise, would there?